You have done the work. You have sat in silence and built the image. You have spoken the words aloud and meant them, at least on the surface. You have taken the steps, sent the message, made the call, shown up when it would have been easier to disappear. And somewhere beneath all of it, somewhere in the quiet space between the affirmation and the exhale, a voice has spoken that you have never quite been willing to name. Not panic, not screaming fear. Something softer and far more dangerous. The steady, low conviction that none of this is actually going to work for you. The common understanding of fear treats it as a recognizable thing, a racing heart, a refusal to act, a visible paralysis that announces itself and demands to be addressed. Most people who study the creative laws believe that if they are still moving, still visualizing, still affirming, still taking action, then fear has been conquered. They have no idea what is destroying them. The real enemy does not announce itself. It lives inside the forward motion, disguised as realism, disguised as caution, disguised as emotional maturity. It is hidden doubt, the silent destroyer that cancels results not by stopping you from beginning, but by ensuring that nothing you build can fully stand. Wallace Wattles spent years writing about the precise mental conditions required for wealth and creation to move from the invisible into the visible. He was not describing a casual relationship between thought and outcome. He was describing a law, and that law required two things that most people never fully examine: definite thought and steady faith. Not occasional faith. Not faith when the evidence cooperates. Faith as an unbroken inner position. The fearless mind that Wattles pointed toward is not the mind of someone who never feels sensation. It is the mind that refuses to divide itself against its own command. Hidden doubt breaks that unity, and when the unity breaks, the creative process does not slow down. It collapses. This video will name the one hidden doubt that destroys all results before they appear. Not the doubt you know about, not the fear that already has a name in your awareness. The doubt beneath the awareness. Here is the open question you will carry into what follows. The thing blocking your results may not be the size of your desire. Your desire may be completely right. Your methods may be sound. The quiet contradiction living under everything you are doing may be the only thing standing between where you are and what you have been building toward. That contradiction has a name, a mechanism, and a cure. Stay with this. Picture the morning ritual. The words come out properly. I am abundant. I am moving toward wealth. The source provides. And as the last word settles, a familiar shadow moves through the mind, almost too quick to catch. But look at my situation. The words are right. The inner report is wrong. That gap, practiced daily, trained into the nervous system through repetition, becomes the operating condition of the entire creative effort. The affirmation sits on the surface. The disbelief runs the foundation. The image is built carefully. The visualization holds the form, the life desired, the outcome intended, the reality summoned through concentrated thought. Then, without drama, the mind fast-forwards past the arrival and lands on the scene where it did not work, where the opportunity fell through, where the door closed, where someone else succeeded and the viewer was quietly passed over. The image is built and immediately played against its own defeat. The creative process begins to impress a contradicted form, and contradicted forms do not materialize cleanly. Action is taken, consistent, disciplined action. Emails written, plans executed, conversations initiated. On the surface, this looks like the certain way. Below the surface, the body is already preparing for the disappointment it has decided is coming. Not dramatically, no announcement, just the low-level muscular tension of someone who has decided to brace before impact. That bracing changes the quality of the action, the tone of the communication, the presence carried into the opportunity. Results begin to arrive bent. When the results collapse, when the opportunity does not convert, when the form does not appear, confusion is the response. I did everything right. And from the outside, it looks that way. The vocabulary was correct. The visualization happened. The action was taken. But the inner ground was divided the entire time. What looked like a creative process was a creative process in conflict with its own signal. The confusion is real, but the cause has been invisible, until now. The most common response to repeated failure in this process is to increase the volume. More affirmations, longer sessions, more repetitions. As if the problem is quantity rather than quality, as if saying the right words 30 times will somehow overpower the doubt that those same words have been sitting on top of for months. The extra layer does not reach the doubt. It adds more surface above it, and the foundation grows heavier and more cracked at the same time. Some people turn up the positivity until it becomes performance. The language gets bolder, the posts more triumphant, the declarations louder in the private journal. The outer surface becomes increasingly polished, and the inner ground becomes increasingly foreign to it. This is not faith. This is the theater of faith, and the thinking stuff that Wattles described is not impressed by theater. It responds to the actual condition of the mind, not the costume the mind is wearing. Forced confidence is a particular trap because it feels productive. There is energy in forcing the emotion upward. The body experiences something that resembles conviction. The voice carries authority when pushed, and for a short window, the person almost convinces themselves. Then they stop pushing, and the silence that follows is louder than anything they said aloud. The doubt has not moved, it waited. What results from this pattern is spiritual performance, the careful maintenance of all the external signs of a mind in alignment, while the actual operating belief underneath remains unchanged. The rituals are observed, the language is correct, the posture is right, and none of it reaches the crack, because the crack was never examined. It was covered. The result is a structure that looks intact from the outside and is failing quietly from within. And the person inside it cannot understand why the law seems to work for everyone except them. The first thing doubt does to the form is crack it. A definite thought is a precise instruction to the thinking stuff. Wattles was specific about this. The thought must be clear, it must be held, and it must remain undivided. Doubt introduces division into the very center of that thought. The form being impressed is not a clean shape anymore. It carries its own contradiction. What reaches the formless substance is a signal that says both this and not this. And what eventually moves back toward visible expression reflects that same unresolved tension. Gratitude in Wattles' system is the living connection between the mind and the source from which all supply flows. Doubt poisons that connection, not by cutting it entirely, but by making it conditional. Gratitude under doubt becomes a negotiation. I am grateful, but I'm not sure this is real. I am thankful, but I don't know if it lasts. That conditional quality changes everything. Gratitude is meant to be the open channel. Doubt closes it slowly, like sediment settling in a pipe, until the flow that was once clear becomes weak and uncertain. Action taken from a divided mind is inconsistent in ways that compound over time. The person takes the step and then second-guesses it, moves forward and then pulls back slightly, commits and then qualifies the commitment in invisible ways. To an outside observer, this might look like ordinary human wavering. Inside the creative process, this inconsistency sends mixed signals across the entire sequence. The action that was supposed to channel the form into visible reality instead describes an unstable relationship between the person and the outcome they claim to want. Perhaps the most insidious cost is what doubt does to waiting. Every creative process involves a period between the inner formation and the outer appearance. During that period, the fearless mind continues in gratitude, continues in definite thought, continues in the certain way. The doubting mind uses that same period as evidence. Silence becomes proof of failure. A delay becomes confirmation of the belief that said it would never work. Waiting, which is a natural part of the creative law, is converted by hidden doubt into a growing argument against the law itself. The viewer abandons the process at exactly the moment that the form is closest to appearing. Definite thought is not simply a focused thought. It is a thought that has been secured. Its form is clear, its intention is specific, and its position is held without inner argument. When hidden doubt is present, that definition becomes impossible to maintain. The viewer holds the thought for a moment, and then the quiet argument begins, and the thought that was definite becomes something negotiated, something partial, something that the mind is simultaneously affirming and quietly fighting. A definite thought under contradiction is not a definite thought anymore. It is a battlefield. Faith, as Wattles taught it, is not belief waiting for confirmation. It is the inner state in which the form is treated as already moving toward expression through channels the mind does not need to see in order to trust. Faith functions as the preserving force. It holds the impressed form in the creative field while the visible mechanisms align. When doubt is secretly operating, faith cannot perform its function. Every time faith would hold the form, doubt reopens the question. Every time the creative process would advance, the secret unbelief withdraws the commitment. The result is a creative process that starts and stops so many times that it never builds enough force to produce a stable outcome. The deepest cost of this dynamic is that the person never learns the real reason for their results. They adjust their affirmations, they change their visualization style, they study new techniques. They wonder if they are working hard enough, thinking big enough, feeling it deeply enough. They do not look beneath those adjustments at the thing that is making all adjustments irrelevant, the persistent, quiet refusal to fully believe that the law works for them specifically. That refusal is the one hidden doubt, and the next section will expose exactly what it is and why Wattles understood it as the greatest threat to the fearless mind. The law is precise, it is consistent, and it does not fail. What fails is the inner condition required to engage it fully. Understanding that distinction is not a minor clarification. It changes everything about how this work is approached, and it reveals why the same person can have the right desire, the right method, and the right action, and still produce results that refuse to stabilize. The law is ready. The question has always been whether the mind presenting itself to the law is undivided enough to receive what the law is prepared to give. The thinking stuff, as Wattles described it, is the original medium of all creation. Every form that exists in the visible world began as an impression in this formless substance. A thought made definite and held with enough clarity moves through this substance like a pattern impressed into clay, and the substance begins to rearrange itself around that pattern. This is not metaphor. This is the operating description of a law that Wattles believed governed all creation, from the original forming of matter down to the specific wealth or conditions that an individual mind calls into expression. The starting requirement of this entire process is the quality of the thought. It must be definite. Once the form has been impressed through definite thought, something must hold it there while the visible world organizes itself to receive it. That preserving function belongs to faith. Faith is not passive. It is an active inner maintenance of the form already impressed. The person practicing the certain way does not waver between the impression and the appearance. They continue to hold the reality of the desired form as a present inner truth, not as a future hope that may or may not arrive. This distinction is everything. Hope is waiting. Faith is holding. Gratitude is the third essential element, and Wattles placed it with remarkable emphasis throughout his writing. The grateful mind is not simply a pleasant mind, it is a connected mind. Gratitude opens and maintains the relationship between the individual consciousness and the source from which all supply originates. A mind that gives genuine, sustained thanks for the good already present and for the good already moving toward expression creates the condition of open receiving. The grateful mind and the source remain in active relationship. Gratitude is the living channel. Action is the fourth element, and it is the means by which the inner form finds its way into visible expression through the practical world. Wattles was clear that the certain way includes efficient action, taken in the present moment with full commitment, without the distortions of fear or urgency. Action does not create the form. Action channels it. The form is already moving through the creative substance. Action provides the visible pathway by which it arrives in the life of the person who impressed it. Without aligned action, the channel is blocked. Doubt breaks the entire sequence by attacking the preservation function. It does not have to break every element to destroy the result. It only needs to introduce division into the faith that is holding the form. When that division appears, the form begins to lose its definition in the creative field. The impression weakens, the channel narrows. Gratitude becomes unstable because the grateful mind is quietly arguing with itself. Action becomes half-committed because the person no longer fully trusts what they are channeling. The entire structure depends on the integrity of the faith holding it, and doubt is a direct assault on that integrity. Wattles was not interested in casual, occasional, or conditional belief. That kind of belief produces casual, occasional, and conditional results, and he had observed this with enough precision to make it the center of his teaching. The system he described was a complete system, not a partial one. Every element was required. Every condition was essential. And among all conditions, the steadiness of the inner state was the one he returned to most persistently. The person practicing the certain way does not practice it on good days and suspend it when the evidence looks discouraging. They practice it as a continuous and unbroken discipline. Steady faith in Wattles's framing means something more specific than a vague general positivity. It means the mind has made a decision about the form it is holding, and that decision does not come up for revision every time circumstances seem to argue against it. Circumstances will argue against it. The delay will seem like denial. The silence will seem like rejection. The outer world will present many reasonable-seeming cases for doubting the form, and the steady mind regards those cases with neither panic nor argument. It simply does not grant them authority over the inner position. Fearlessness, as Wattles understood it, is fundamentally a description of mental unity. A mind that is genuinely fearless about a desired outcome is not experiencing the absence of sensation. It has achieved the condition in which the desired form and the operating belief are aligned without hidden contradiction. There is no quiet voice arguing against the command. There is no secret reservation undermining the impression. The whole of the mind's direction is set toward the form, and nothing inside the mind is pulling against it. This unity is what makes the creative process function at full power. The principle Wattles was protecting was not a philosophical comfort. It was a practical operating requirement. A mind arguing against its own command is spending creative force in two directions at once. Half the energy impresses the form, the other half erodes it. No building can rise when half the labor is devoted to pulling down what the other half erects. Wattles saw this not as a spiritual failure, but as a mechanical one. The mind was simply not operating in the conditions the law required, and the correction was not emotional reassurance. It was the deliberate restoration of mental unity. The reason Wattles's teaching remains so consistently misread is that most people extract the outer practices and ignore the inner conditions. They take the visualization, they take the affirmation, they take the action principles, and they apply all of them on top of a mind that is secretly divided, and then they conclude that the law is inconsistent. The law is not inconsistent. The law is indifferent to inconsistency in the practitioner. It simply reflects back the actual condition of the mind engaging it. A divided mind produces divided results. An undivided mind produces results that stabilize and build toward the form that was impressed. One of the most widespread misunderstandings of Wattles's teaching on the fearless mind is the belief that fearlessness requires the complete absence of uncomfortable sensation. People read phrases like faith in the law and undivided thought and conclude that if they ever feel uncertainty, they have failed. They have not. The sensation of uncertainty is not the same as enthroning uncertainty as the governing authority of the mind. A person can notice a doubtful thought passing through awareness and still refuse to act from that doubt. The sensation is not the problem. What is done with the sensation determines everything. The problem arises when the sensation of doubt is allowed to revise the form, when the image being held in definite thought is adjusted because the outer world looks discouraging. When the declaration of faith is quietly softened because it starts to feel unrealistic. When the gratitude practice becomes hollow because the doubt has convinced the mind that there is nothing stable to be grateful for. At that moment, doubt has moved from sensation to authority. It has crossed from a passing weather pattern into an operating assumption, and once it takes that position, the form it was threatening begins to genuinely lose its integrity. The fearless mind Wattles pointed toward is not a mind without weather. It is a mind with a settled interior beneath whatever weather passes through it. The sailor who knows their course does not abandon the helm because the wind changes. The change of wind is noted. The course is held. The wind does not override the destination. That is exactly the posture the fearless mind maintains toward doubt. Something may come through the awareness that questions the form. The form remains. The law continues. The internal authority does not yield to the sensation. The certain way is called certain, not because the practitioner is always comfortable, but because the law is always consistent. The certainty belongs to the law, and the practitioner's task is to align with that certainty rather than with the constantly shifting evidence of the outer world. Most people reverse this. They grant certainty to what they can see and question the law when it does not immediately confirm itself to the senses. Wattles was explicitly redirecting that relationship. The law is the stable thing. The outer evidence is the variable. Trust accordingly. Enthroning doubt as authority means granting it the power to make decisions, to stop an action because doubt said it was pointless, to weaken an affirmation because doubt called it unrealistic, to reduce the definition of a desired form because doubt said it was too ambitious. Every one of these responses is the mind obeying doubt rather than the law. And every time doubt is obeyed, it grows stronger. Every time it is acknowledged but not obeyed, it grows weaker. The fearless mind does not destroy doubt by refusing to feel it. It destroys doubt by refusing to govern itself according to it. Results are not destroyed after they fail to appear. They are destroyed long before. The moment doubt enters the faith that is preserving the form, the destruction begins. The outer world has not yet responded. The channels have not yet arranged themselves. The form is still in the invisible, still moving through the creative substance. But inside the mind that impressed it, the preservation is already breaking down. The crack appears in the foundation before the building has risen above the ground. This is not a metaphor about psychology. It is a description of the precise sequence by which the creative process is interrupted. The inner order that Wattles described is a sequence with no optional steps. Definite thought impresses the form. Faith preserves the form. Gratitude maintains the connection to source. Action provides the channel. Each element depends on the integrity of the ones before it. Doubt does not need to attack the final step to destroy the result. It attacks the second step, faith, and from that single point of corruption, every subsequent element is compromised. The action that follows corrupted faith is misaligned action. The gratitude that follows corrupted faith is conditional gratitude. The entire sequence produces a different result than a clean sequence would. The channel through which results move from invisible to visible is not a mechanical pipe. It is a relationship between the mind and the creative substance, and that relationship is sensitive to the condition of the mind maintaining it. Hidden doubt does not block the channel the way a wall blocks a corridor. It narrows it gradually, subtly, in ways the person cannot see, until the flow of results is thin and unstable, rather than full and consistent. The person feels like they are receiving something, but it never holds, it never compounds, it never fully arrives. That chronic near arrival is the signature of a channel narrowed by hidden doubt. The abandonment problem is perhaps the final and most complete form of destruction. The creative process has a natural pace, and that pace does not match the urgency of the doubting mind. When results do not appear on the schedule that doubt has set for them, doubt presents this as evidence. See, it is not working. And the person leaves the law at exactly the moment when the form was closest to breakthrough. This is not coincidence. The doubt that made them leave had been working all along toward this conclusion. Every delay was converted into evidence. Every silence was catalogued as confirmation. The abandonment is not a new failure. It is the final expression of a failure that began the moment the inner enemy was allowed to remain unnamed inside the foundation. Hidden doubt is not the fear of something terrible happening. It does not announce itself with urgency or distress. It arrives as a quiet but, not a refusal, not a breakdown, a single inner conjunction that follows every affirmation, every visualization, every act of faith. I am moving toward wealth, but look at the numbers. The source provides, but this situation is different. The form is being held, but I have thought this before. That small conjunction carries the full weight of the destruction because it opens a space between the stated belief and the actual operating assumption, and in that space, the form begins to lose its definition. Beneath the formal language of the creative practice, a secret expectation of disappointment runs like groundwater. It does not surface as a declared belief. The person would deny it if asked directly. They would say, "I believe in this process. I am committed," and they are, on the surface. But the expectation of disappointment has its own logic, its own timing, its own way of preparing the mind for the loss it has already decided is inevitable. That preparation is the most destructive work the hidden doubt performs. It rearranges the inner ground before the outer world has done anything at all. The particular form of hidden doubt that Wattles' teaching most directly confronts is this: the belief that the law works, but not for this person, not specifically, not given their history, their starting position, their particular set of complications. The law is real, they privately conclude, but its benefits flow toward different kinds of people, those who were born into better circumstances, those who have stronger minds, those who carry a kind of natural confidence that was never available to this particular person. This exception-making is hidden doubt at its most precise and most paralyzing. It accepts the law in theory while exempting the self from its operation. A closely related mechanism is the quiet refusal to fully receive. The person wants the result, but something in them resists its complete arrival. This can appear as unworthiness, as guilt about desiring more, as the belief that receiving fully would somehow expose them to a fall they cannot recover from. It manifests as pulling back slightly whenever something good approaches, as finding a way to qualify the good news, as preparing for the loss of the very thing they are claiming to pursue. The form is being impressed and simultaneously resisted. The creative substance receives a confused instruction and responds accordingly. What all of these mechanisms share is the cracked form. The impression made on the thinking stuff is not clean. It carries its contradiction inside it. Like a mold that has split along the center, the substance poured into it cannot hold the intended shape. What emerges is distorted, partial, unstable. The person looks at the distorted result and works to improve their technique, to visualize more clearly, to act more consistently. They are improving the top of the process, while the bottom remains fractured. Until the crack is found and sealed, no improvement at the level of technique produces results that hold. The hidden doubt is not a personality flaw, it is not a spiritual deficiency. It is a learned response to accumulated evidence, an inner protective mechanism that decided at some point that expecting defeat was safer than risking full faith. Understanding this does not excuse it, but it explains why the destruction is so consistent and so invisible. The mechanism is doing exactly what it was built to do: protect the person from being surprised by failure. The cost of that protection is the guarantee of the very failure it was built to anticipate. The sequence begins in thought, where doubt first enters. A thought is formed. I am working toward a specific result. I am directing my mind with intention. That thought has a quality, a shape, an emotional atmosphere. The moment doubt enters, it does not destroy the thought immediately. It modifies its atmosphere. The thought that was clear and committed now carries a slight uncertainty in its background, like static at the edge of a clear signal. The person continues with the thought, but the thought has been altered. As doubt runs alongside the thought, the image it was building begins to lose definition. Definiteness of thought requires that the form being imagined is held with precision and clarity. Doubt introduces softness at the edges of that precision. The image becomes vague in specific ways. The person in the visualization is not quite fully themselves, or the scene is set in an unspecified future rather than felt as a present reality, or the details that would make it alive and specific are allowed to fade. The form loses its sharpness, and a form without sharpness cannot be cleanly impressed. Unstable faith is the third stage in the sequence. Faith is not a static emotion. It requires active maintenance, a continuous inner position that holds the form as real while the visible world is still organizing around it. Doubt destabilizes this maintenance by introducing questions that faith is not supposed to be answering. How will this actually come? What if the channel does not open? When will there be evidence? These are the questions of a mind that has withdrawn its commitment to the law and returned to negotiating with the visible. Faith becomes unstable, checking and rechecking rather than holding and continuing. When faith is unstable, gratitude follows it into instability. Grateful thought requires a settled conviction that the source is abundant and that the desired good is already moving toward expression. Doubt removes that settled conviction and replaces it with conditionality. The gratitude practice begins to feel dishonest because the mind is simultaneously giving thanks and privately doubting the reality of what it is thanking. This conflict slowly drains the gratitude of its power until the practice is an empty form, words said without the inner connection that makes them alive. Action emerging from a mind in this condition is inherently inconsistent. The person takes a step forward, and the doubt registers it as evidence that results are not yet present, which it uses to question whether the step was the right one, which delays the next step, which creates a gap in the channel. Consistent, efficient action in the certain way requires a kind of inner clarity about direction. Doubt replaces clarity with constant second-guessing, and action performed under relentless self-interrogation is slow, contracted, and inadequate to the form it was meant to channel. Results fail to stabilize not because the creative law failed, but because the entire sequence it requires was compromised from the inside. What arrives is partial, a hint of the form, a fragment of the desired outcome, enough to make the person believe they were almost there, not enough to constitute the full result that a clean process would have produced. The partial result is simultaneously encouraging and demoralizing because it suggests proximity but denies completion, and the hidden doubt uses that incompleteness as its most powerful argument yet. See how close it got and still fell short. What hope is there? The final stage of the invisible destruction is the pattern's self-confirmation. Each time the result fails to stabilize, the hidden doubt records the failure as validation of its original prediction. The expectation of disappointment was correct. The exception making about this specific person's eligibility for the law's benefits seems more justified. The conviction that full faith is foolish grows stronger. The doubt has used the results it created to deepen its own hold on the mind that produced them. The cycle becomes tighter with every repetition, and escaping it requires not more technique, but the deliberate identification and confrontation of what has been running the foundation all along. One of the most reliable ways hidden doubt strengthens itself is through the habit of rechecking evidence. The mind in doubt cannot hold a form and trust the creative process to move it forward. It must verify. It must look for signs. It must measure the outer world against the inner claim and look for confirmation that the law is working. Each time this checking occurs, two destructive things happen simultaneously. The inner position of faith is abandoned in favor of evidence hunting, and the absence of visible proof is logged as a point against the form. Rechecking is doubt feeding itself. Comparison operates by a similar mechanism. When the person in the process begins measuring their progress against another person's visible results, they remove themselves from the law's consistent operation and enter a framework where worth and eligibility are determined by relative standing. The other person's success is processed by the hidden doubt not as evidence that the law works, but as evidence that it works for others. The comparison does not inspire, it confirms the secret exception, that this specific person, for reasons that feel genuinely particular to their situation, remains outside the circle of those the law serves fully. Speaking failure is a form of hidden doubt that moves the internal into the external and reinforces both in the same motion. When the person talks about how things are not working, how the process seems slow, how results are not coming, they are not simply reporting a fact. They are making a declaration to the thinking stuff. Language is not neutral in the creative process. Every description of the outer world that aligns with doubt rather than with the intended form is an impression being made alongside the affirmations, and it carries its own weight in the creative substance. Hiding fear under humor is subtle because it seems harmless. The joke about failure, the self-deprecating remark about one's prospects, the laugh that says, "I know this sounds crazy," when describing a desired outcome. These are not neutral social lubricants. Each one is a small act of distance from the form being held. They communicate in a socially acceptable register, the same hidden doubt that the person would never say aloud in a serious context. And because they feel light, they escape examination. The mind does not flag them as threats to the creative process. They accumulate. Calling faith foolish is the form of hidden doubt that operates in the intellectual register. The person does not want to appear naive. They have been educated. They have observed the world's complexity. They understand how many things go wrong, and they have built an identity around the capacity to reason carefully. In that context, full faith in a creative law can feel like intellectual surrender. So the doubt wraps itself in the vocabulary of intelligence. I need to be realistic. I need to have a backup plan. I need to stay grounded. Each of these phrases in the context of the certain way is the sound of the foundation cracking. Abandoning action after a delay is the most final form of doubt's interruption. The certain way requires action that continues through silence. The creative process between the impression and the visible result always includes a period of apparent absence, when nothing in the outer world confirms the inner work. For the fearless mind, this period is held in continuing faith. For the mind under hidden doubt, it is experienced as proof. The action stops. The declaration is quietly withdrawn. The form, which was perhaps only a single aligned step away from beginning its visible expression, loses the channel through which it would have arrived. The doubt wins not by defeating the law, but by convincing the practitioner to leave before the law completes its work. Consider a building in its earliest stage of construction. The foundation has been prepared, the ground cleared, the concrete poured, the steel set. Before the first wall rises above ground level, a crack appears in the foundation. Not a large crack, nothing visible from any distance, nothing that would concern a casual observer, but the crack runs precisely through the point where the greatest structural load will rest. The builder does not see it. They begin raising the walls. The work looks correct. The materials are good. The plans are sound. The building rises. What the visible progress conceals is the inevitability beneath it. The building does not collapse because the roof was poorly designed or because the walls chose to fail. It collapses because the crack in the foundation was never addressed, and as the structure grew heavier, the unresolved weakness was pressed into its full consequence. The crack did not grow because of bad luck. It was always going to spread under load. The only way to prevent the collapse was to find it before anything was built on top of it. Not to improve the walls, not to redesign the roof, but to return to the foundation and seal what had been left open. Doubt is that crack. The creative process is the building. The foundation is faith, specifically the steady, undivided faith that preserves the form while the visible world organizes around it. A single unexamined crack of hidden doubt runs through the very center of that faith, and as the work continues, as the actions compound and the visualizations deepen and the affirmations multiply, the total weight of the creative process presses down on the one point that cannot hold it. The collapse is not external. No force from outside the building brought it down. The failure was already present in the ground before the first stone was laid above it. The fearless mind does not make the foundation more ornate. It seals the crack. This is the essential distinction that changes everything about how this work is practiced. Most people, when their results collapse, look upward for the cause. They examine the quality of their visualization. They question their technique. They wonder if they thought big enough, or small enough, or in the right emotional state. The real examination must go downward, into the foundation, into the silent place where the doubt has been living and spreading while everything above it looked like progress. Sealing the foundation does not require the person to become a different kind of human being. It does not require the elimination of all uncertainty from the personality. It requires a specific act, the honest identification of the hidden crack and the deliberate refusal to continue building on top of it. The mind that has found its hidden doubt and named it clearly has already done the most important work. What follows, the return to definite thought, the restoration of steady faith, the recommitment to the certain way, is the work of sealing. And a sealed foundation can hold any structure the law is capable of raising. The building stands or falls from the ground, not from the sky. Results appear or collapse from the quality of the faith preserving them, not from the size of the desire pressing for them. The fearless mind understands this. It does not perform the walls while ignoring the crack. It goes to the lowest point, the deepest layer, the inner ground where the doubt has been operating quietly, and it does the work that makes everything built above it stable. That is what it means to destroy the doubt. Not to suppress it, not to cover it, not to shout it down with louder affirmations, but to find it at its source and remove it from the foundation entirely. A structure built on sealed ground can withstand the weather that passes through the creative process, the delays, the silences, the apparent contradictions, the seasons of apparent stagnation. The weather is not the enemy. It was never the enemy. The enemy was always the crack, and the crack was always inside, and it was always sealing that crack, not improving the weather, that made the building rise to its full height and stand. The language is correct. The practices are maintained. The vocabulary has been studied. From every visible angle, the commitment looks genuine. But beneath that visible commitment, in the place where actual operating beliefs live, something else is present. The quiet, persistent, unexamined expectation of defeat. The person believes outwardly. They have chosen to use the tools, to study the teaching, to apply the method. And simultaneously, at a level below conscious declaration, they expect to end up where they have always ended up. In that gap between the outward position and the inward expectation, the creative force is consumed. This split does not feel dramatic. It rarely announces itself. The person goes through the day doing the right things, saying the right words, maintaining the right posture. But the split runs through all of it, dividing the creative force the way a river fork divides water. Half the force presses toward the desired form. The other half, running quietly beneath the surface of the practice, is already preparing for the familiar failure. The total force available to the creative process is never fully present because the inner enemy is always drawing from the same source that the faith is drawing from. What results from this division is a force that looks committed but functions at half power or less. The impression on the thinking stuff is made with one hand, while the other quietly erases it. The faith holds the form while the hidden unbelief slowly withdraws the hold. These two actions do not cancel each other cleanly. What they produce is a distorted and inconsistent result, something that appears partially, then retreats partially, then seems to approach again and again retreats. The person experiences this as the cruelty of the law. It is not the law's cruelty. It is the perfectly accurate reflection of a divided mind. I'm just protecting myself. This is the first disguise, and it is perhaps the most persuasive because it speaks in the language of self-care. The person tells themselves that holding back a portion of their faith is prudent management of emotional risk. Fully committing and then losing would be devastating, so they keep a part of themselves in reserve. What they do not recognize is that this reserved part is the very part that would have sealed the foundation. The protection they think they are offering themselves is the mechanism that ensures they will need protecting. I don't want to get my hopes up. This phrase is not wisdom. It is a description of someone who has already decided on the outcome and is managing the distance between desire and disappointment. Getting hopes up is not a danger in the creative process. Hope held at the level of faith, definite and steady, is a force of creation. Hope managed downward to protect against feeling is a withdrawal from the very inner position the law requires. The person repeating this phrase has not found a safe middle ground. They have simply ensured that their faith is thin enough to break before the result arrives. I'm being realistic. Realism, as applied to the creative process, is usually a word for doubt that has passed its own audit and given itself a certificate of intelligence. The realistic assessment reviews the current conditions, the past patterns, the apparent odds, and concludes that full faith is naive. But the creative process Wattles described is precisely a process by which inner conditions create outer ones. The realistic assessment of current outer conditions is a description of what the inner conditions have produced so far. Treating that description as a permanent verdict and using it to limit faith is circular thinking that guarantees its own conclusion. I'll believe when I see it. This is the full inversion of the certain way. Wattles was explicit. The mental state must precede the outer evidence, not follow it. Belief conditioned on prior visible proof is not faith. It is the ordinary mind's relationship to its own past, and the ordinary mind's relationship to its own past produces ordinary results, the same results it has always produced. The person waiting to believe until they see is waiting for a cause to follow its own effect, and that is not how the law operates. It has never operated that way. Every single one of these phrases is the voice of hidden doubt, speaking in the dialect of sophistication. They all perform the same function. They provide the mind with a reason to withhold the full inner commitment that the law requires, while making that withholding feel reasonable, responsible, and intelligent. The inner enemy is most dangerous, not when it is irrational, but when it sounds entirely sensible. A doubt that sounds like wisdom is a doubt that never gets examined. And a doubt that never gets examined never gets destroyed. The person who keeps hidden doubt as a quiet companion within their creative practice never gives the law its full obedience. This is not a moral judgment. It is a functional one. The law, as Wattles described it, requires definite thought, steady faith, genuine gratitude, and efficient action. All of these require full inner engagement. Partial engagement produces partial function, not proportional results. The law does not scale smoothly downward with the level of commitment offered to it. A divided mind does not produce half the results a united mind would. It produces unstable results that cannot compound, cannot build, and cannot be trusted to remain. Half-faith is a particular form of suffering because it is almost faith. The person is close enough to the certain way to see it working in fragments, to catch a glimpse of the form approaching, to receive small confirmations that temporarily inflate the belief before the hidden doubt reasserts itself and collapses the result again. This oscillation between brief confirmation and returning doubt is more exhausting than clear failure. Clear failure ends something. Half-faith keeps the person suspended in a perpetual almost, never far enough from the law to release it and never unified enough to receive its full expression. It is the creative process's version of purgatory. Half-action has visible consequences in the world, though the person performing it often cannot see it clearly from inside the experience. An email written in half-faith carries a different quality than one written from settled inner authority. A conversation held while internally braced for rejection produces a different response than one entered from genuine confidence in the value being offered. An opportunity pursued with the reservation that it will probably not convert is engaged differently than one approached from an expectation of aligned outcome. These differences are not dramatic enough to appear as obvious mistakes, but they compound over time into a pattern of near misses that the person attributes to bad luck rather than to the half measure in which they were pursuing each one. The stable result, the kind that builds on itself, compounds over time and reflects the full intention of the definite thought that was impressed, requires the full sequence of the certain way operating without internal interruption. Hidden doubt does not allow that full sequence to run. It interrupts the faith. It conditions the gratitude. It stiffens the action. And the result that emerges from this interrupted sequence is not a smaller version of the intended result. It is a different result altogether, one shaped more by the operating doubt than by the intended form. The person created something. They simply did not create what they thought they were creating. The deepest cost is the lost years, not months, years of practice, of study, of sincere effort applied to a process that was secretly undermined from within by the one thing that was never named and never confronted. Every year spent in half-faith is a year of creative force divided against itself, a year of results shaped more by the expectation of failure than by the vision that was held above it. The inner enemy asks for so little, just a small reservation, just a modest protection against disappointment. And in exchange, it takes everything that the full application of the law would have produced. That is the cost of keeping it. The destruction of hidden doubt does not begin with a new technique. It begins with an act of honesty that most practitioners of the certain way have been carefully avoiding. Naming the doubt directly and accurately without softening it into something more acceptable. Not I have some uncertainty, but I secretly expect this not to work. Not I sometimes lose faith, but I have been holding an exception clause in my relationship to this law, and that clause is costing me everything I'm working toward. This kind of precision is uncomfortable because it removes the dignity of the sophisticated disguises and shows the doubt for exactly what it is. Stopping the habit of hiding doubt under sophistication is the second necessary step. Every time the mind reaches for a phrase like, "I'm being realistic," or "I just don't want to get my hopes up," it is maintaining a camouflage over a belief it is not ready to examine. Replacing those phrases with honest recognition is not a psychological exercise. It is a practical requirement of the creative process. The doubt cannot be addressed while it continues to operate under cover. Pulling back the cover, seeing it plainly, saying its name without diplomatic softening, is the act that makes the confrontation possible. Confronting hidden doubt as an enemy is a different relationship to it than examining it with curiosity or treating it with compassion or explaining it through past circumstances. Understanding why the doubt was formed is useful context, but understanding is not the same as confrontation. The doubt must be addressed not as a fragile thing to be handled carefully, but as a direct threat to the creative work being done. Because that is exactly what it is. It is the crack in the foundation. It is the inner voice cancelling the command. It is the thing that has been taking the creative force and using it to guarantee the very failure it claimed to be protecting against. Treat it accordingly. The return to definite thought is the active completion of the confrontation. Once the doubt has been named and confronted, the mind that was divided can be redirected. The form that was being held in split faith can be restated clearly, precisely, without the hidden qualification. Not, "I am working toward this, but I'm not sure, but this is the form I am holding and I hold it completely." The difference between those two inner positions is the difference between a cracked foundation and a sealed one. The confrontation clears the ground. The return to definite thought begins the rebuilding. Everything the law is capable of producing can now begin to move through a channel that is, at last, fully open. The first thing that must stop is the practice of speaking against the desired form. Every time the mouth forms words that describe the outer world in terms that contradict the inner intention, the creative process receives a divided instruction. The declaration of faith says one thing. The spoken commentary on daily life says another. And the thinking stuff responds not to the formal declaration, but to the actual condition of the mind, which includes both. Stop saying the outcome will not come. Stop describing the situation as evidence against the form. Stop narrating the delay as though it were a verdict. The spoken word is not neutral, and what is spoken against the form helps to keep the form from arriving. The compulsive checking of evidence must also stop. Every act of checking the outer world for confirmation that the inner work is progressing is an act of doubt, masquerading as due diligence. Faith does not require confirmation before it continues. Evidence checking is the behavior of a mind that has not fully committed. A mind that agreed to engage the law but reserved the right to withdraw the commitment if the evidence did not cooperate within a certain time frame. That reservation is the doubt, and every check of the evidence renews it, regardless of what the evidence shows. The checking itself is the problem. Stop checking from fear. Calling doubt intelligence must stop. The inner voice that sounds rational when it questions faith, that uses the language of careful thinking to build a case for reservation and caution, is not wisdom. It is protection dressed in the vocabulary of discernment. The mind that has spent years identifying its doubt as its most reliable faculty will find this difficult to release because it has a long history of confirming the very failures it predicted. But predicting failure is not the same as being wise. Preventing the faith that would have avoided the failure is not the same as being smart. The sophistication is a trap. Stop granting it authority over the inner position. Expecting disappointment as a form of protection must be released. The logic of this expectation runs, if I expect to fail, the failure will hurt less. The mind that has adopted this strategy does not realize what it has traded. It traded the possibility of full creative engagement for the emotional management of a failure it made more likely by expecting it. The protection does not work. Anticipated disappointment does not soften real disappointment meaningfully. What it does consistently is reduce the creative force applied to the process and increase the probability of the very outcome that was being protected against. The strategy does not serve the person. Release it. When the creative process grows silent, when the outer world offers no confirmation, when the delay extends beyond what the mind considers reasonable, the action must continue. Stopping action after silence is doubt completing its final move, the withdrawal of the channel through which the form would have arrived. The silence is not a signal to stop. It is a test of the inner position, a clarification of whether the commitment is real or conditional. A commitment that depends on regular confirmation is not a commitment. It is a transaction, and when the expected return is delayed, the transaction is cancelled. Continue the action. The silence is part of the process. Do not mistake it for an ending. The fearless mind is not a gift that some people are born with and others are denied. It is a discipline. It is built by the consistent practice of choosing the inner position of faith over the inner pull of doubt, not once, not in a peak moment of inspiration, but repeatedly, daily, in the ordinary and unremarkable moments when the doubt returns and the choice must be made again. Accepting this disciplines the expectations about the nature of the work. The viewer who expects fearlessness to feel natural and effortless will abandon it the moment it requires effort. The viewer who accepts it as a discipline will return to it after every departure and grow stronger through the returning. Protecting faith is an active responsibility. The mind that thinks faith will take care of itself, that once established it requires no maintenance, will find it quietly eroding through the accumulated small concessions to doubt, the checking, the speaking against the form, the calling realism what is actually reservation. Faith must be guarded deliberately. The thoughts admitted into the mind, the conversations engaged, the media consumed, the inner monologue maintained throughout the day, all of these either reinforce or erode the faith that is preserving the form. Accept that protection is required and practice it without apology. Holding the form through all weather is the practical meaning of steady faith. The form is the specific, definite intended outcome, held in thought with enough clarity and precision that it constitutes an actual impression on the creative substance. Holding it means not allowing delays, contradictions, or apparent failures to revise it. The form does not shrink because the evidence looks discouraging. The form does not become vague because holding it clearly feels unrealistic in a given moment. The form is held exactly as it was impressed through every season of the creative process until it appears in visible expression. Gratitude must be maintained not as a ritual, but as a living connection. The mind that gives thanks only when things are going visibly well is not practicing gratitude in the sense Wattles intended. Gratitude that depends on favorable outer conditions is conditional, and conditional gratitude does not maintain the open channel to source that the creative process requires. Maintaining gratitude through the delay, through the silence, through the apparent contradiction, is the specific practice that keeps the connection to the formless substance alive and active. Accept this requirement. Stop suspending gratitude when the evidence does not cooperate. Action must continue regardless of what the outer world appears to confirm or deny. The certain way does not have pause buttons. There is no provision in Wattles' teaching for stopping efficient action, because results have not yet appeared. The action is the channel. A channel that is opened and then closed and then reopened does not allow a consistent flow. Commit to the continuation of action as a baseline from which doubt is not permitted to remove the person. Let the action itself become the daily statement of the inner position, that the form is real, the law is consistent, the channel is open, and the result is moving toward visible expression through every step taken in alignment with that truth. I destroy the doubt, not manage it, not understand it, not negotiate with it or apologize for it, or give it a corner of the mind where it can live quietly. Destroy it. Remove it from the foundation. Name it when it appears, confront it directly, and refuse to govern any action or any thought by its authority. This is not an act of violence against the self. It is an act of clarity about who is in command of the inner life. The doubt is not the person. It is an opposing force that has been allowed to operate within the creative process for too long. The declaration that destroys it is the act of reclaiming the full authority of the mind over its own direction. I do not argue against my own command. The command issued through definite thought is a real instruction to a real creative force. To then turn the mind against that command, to argue with it, to qualify it, to reduce it, is not caution. It is self-destruction. The mind that has chosen a form and then argues against that form is using its own force against itself, dividing the power that could be moving the form toward expression and redirecting half of it into erosion. The new inner position refuses this division. The command is given, the command is kept. The mind does not become the argument against its own intention. I hold the form, through delay, through silence, through apparent contradiction, and through the seasons when the outer world offers nothing that resembles confirmation. The form is held not because the evidence supports it, but because the law supports it, and the law does not fluctuate with outer conditions. Holding the form is the inner act that corresponds to faith, the daily, practical, unsexy practice of returning to the clear image of the intended outcome and holding it with the same conviction that was present when it was first impressed, not as a hope, as a held reality. I continue in the certain way, not until the doubt returns, not until the delay exceeds a certain threshold, not until the next moment when faith feels easier. The certain way is a continuous path, and continuing in it means that doubt is not granted the power to interrupt the journey. When doubt appears, as it will, the response is not a long internal debate. It is the return to the path. One step, then another. The continuation itself is the statement. Every moment of continuing, especially in the moments when continuation is hardest, is an act of destroying the doubt by refusing to allow it to stop the forward movement of the certain way. Two paths are present now, and the time for pretending they are not in conflict with each other has passed. The path of hidden doubt is familiar. Its landmarks are known. Its rhythms match the history of near arrival and quiet disappointment that has already been lived. It offers a specific kind of safety, the protection of low expectation, the comfort of never being fully exposed to the risk of genuine commitment. Most people choose it not because they are cowards, but because the alternative, the exposure of full faith, feels genuinely dangerous to a mind that has experienced repeated failure and built its caution accordingly. The path of the fearless mind is different in a specific way that most people underestimate before they walk it. It does not feel comfortable. Full faith, the undivided inner position, the holding of the form without a reserved exit, feels exposed in a way that the guarded mind finds almost unbearable. The protection of the small reservation was serving a real emotional function. Removing it creates a real sensation of vulnerability. The person who chooses the fearless mind must be willing to sit with that exposure, to feel it without fleeing back to the safety of the hidden, but to allow the law to do its work through a mind that is genuinely open rather than secretly defended. Doubt feels safe. This is the last and most important thing to understand about it. The safety it offers is a story told by a mechanism that has been protecting the person from imagined failures by guaranteeing real ones. The safety is false. The protection costs more than the vulnerability it was protecting against. And the fearless mind, which feels exposed, is actually the more protected position, because it operates in alignment with the law that creates results, rather than in alignment with the fear that prevents them. The exposure of faith is the only exposure that leads anywhere worth arriving. The choice must be made, not as a general philosophical preference, but as a specific inner commitment in this moment, with this form, in this process. Abstract endorsement of the fearless mind, while continuing to harbor the hidden doubt in a specific corner of the current work, is not a choice. It is a deferral. The real choice is precise. In the specific area where the doubt has been living, in the specific form that has been secretly expected not to arrive, in the specific reservation that has been mistaken for realism, choose the fearless mind. Choose the exposure of full commitment. Choose the law over the protection of failure. That choice, made in the place where doubt has been living, is where the result is born or destroyed. Begin each day with one specific internal inquiry. Where am I secretly expecting failure right now? Not a general scan for negativity, not a broad emotional audit. A precise question directed at the specific areas of current creative work. The desired form is named. The active process is brought to mind. And the honest question is asked, in this area, what does the operating expectation actually say? Not the declared expectation, not the affirmation from the morning ritual, but the real prediction running in the background of the mind while the surface practice continues. This question asked honestly is the beginning of the detection process. Learning to notice the phrases that weaken faith in real time is one of the most practically valuable skills in the certain way. These phrases arrive casually, in ordinary conversation, in private thought, in the running commentary that accompanies daily experience. I hope this works out. I'm not sure this is going anywhere. I don't know how it will come. Maybe this one isn't meant for me. Each phrase sounds like a reasonable acknowledgement of uncertainty. Each one is a small act of withdrawing from definite thought and adding weight to the doubt beneath the practice. Noticing them as they appear, rather than retroactively after the damage is done, is the daily perceptual skill. The hidden but can be identified specifically once the person begins listening for it. It is the conjunction that follows every statement of faith with a qualification. I believe the form is moving toward expression, but this situation is complicated. I am holding the image, but I don't know how it can work. I am grateful for the good moving toward me, but I can't see any sign of it yet. The but is not just a word. It is the point in the sentence where the doubt reasserts its authority over the declaration. Finding it, naming it, recognizing it in the moment it appears, removes its power to operate invisibly. Named things lose the advantage of concealment. Once detected, the doubt must be named immediately and without ceremony. Not with drama, not with self-criticism, not with a long internal speech about why the doubt formed or what it means about the person's spiritual progress. Simply named. That is hidden doubt. That is the crack in the foundation. That is the thing that would destroy this form if allowed to continue. The naming is brief and precise, and it serves a single function. It removes the doubt from the category of reasonable thought and places it clearly in the category of inner enemy. From that category, it can be addressed. Left unnamed in the category of reasonable thought, it continues to operate without resistance. The replacement of a doubting thought must be precise enough to address the specific doubt rather than generic enough to float above it. What if this fails is a specific thought. The replacement is not everything will be fine. The replacement is, I do not cancel the form. That statement is exact. It names what the doubting thought was attempting to do and refuses it. It does not argue about whether failure is possible. It simply announces that the form being held is not available for cancellation on the basis of a hypothetical. The replacement thought matches the doubt's specificity with an equal specificity of commitment. Maybe this isn't for me carries the full weight of the exception-making that is the most paralyzing form of hidden doubt. The replacement is not a general reassurance that good things are coming. It is, I remain in the law. That statement removes the exception. It places the person back inside the consistent operation of the creative law rather than outside it looking in. The law does not have exceptions. The belief in personal exception is the doubt, and the replacement thought dismantles that belief directly by refusing to accept the exception's premise. The person is in the law works, the form is held. There is no exception. I'll believe it when I see it, is the thought that most completely inverts the certain way, because it makes the inner position dependent on outer confirmation and therefore permanently vulnerable to the creative process's natural period of invisible development. The replacement is, faith is now. Not faith will be real when I have evidence. Not faith will grow as results appear. Faith is the present inner position. It is not a future reward for visible proof. The thought that delays faith until evidence is present is the thought that guarantees evidence will not appear, because evidence requires the prior operation of a faith that was refused. Replace the delay with the present tense. Faith is not coming. It is here, or it is nowhere. These replacements require consistent practice, not because the mind is incapable of making them once, but because the old doubting thoughts have a long history and a deep groove in the neural pattern of the person who has been thinking them. The replacement is not a one-time correction, it is a persistent redirection. Each time the doubting thought arises, the replacement is chosen. Each time the but appears, the foundation is re-examined and resealed. The discipline is not about achieving a permanent state free of doubt. It is about developing the consistent practice of choosing the replacement rather than accepting the doubt. Over time, the replacement becomes the dominant thought. The groove deepens in a different direction. The action that doubt most wants to delay is the specific action that would demonstrate the clearest commitment to the form. Doubt does not object equally to all actions. It reserves its strongest resistance for the ones that would require the most genuine inner authority. Sending the proposal, making the call, applying for the position, beginning the work on the project that the form requires. These are the actions whose delay doubt prefers, because delaying them allows the doubt to continue operating in the background while the person maintains the comfortable story that they are preparing, planning, or waiting for the right moment. Take the action doubt wants to delay. Take it now, not because urgency demands it, but because the postponement is the doubt's most effective tactic. When that action is taken, it must be taken with calm. Not with the performative confidence of forced emotion, not with the frenetic energy of someone pushing against their own resistance, but with the settled steadiness of a person who has made a decision about what they are doing and is doing it. The calmness is important because it is itself evidence of the inner position. The doubting mind rushes or freezes. The fearless mind moves steadily. The quality of calm in the action communicates something to the creative process that urgency cannot, that the person has accepted the form as real and is moving in alignment with its arrival rather than frantically trying to force it. Completeness in action is the specific standard the certain way requires. Not half measures, not partial engagement, not doing enough to say the action was taken while leaving the most exposing part undone. The form being channeled into visible expression requires a complete channel, and a channel that is narrowed by incomplete action is a channel that produces partial results. Do the action completely, write the entire message, have the full conversation. Pursue the opportunity to its actual conclusion rather than to the point where the doubt says, "That's enough, you've done what you could." Completeness is a form of faith expressed in the physical world. Dramatizing fear during action is one of the ways the doubting mind reclaims authority even after the decision to act has been made. It is possible to take an action and simultaneously narrate it internally as a terrifying ordeal. That internal narration is the doubt maintaining its claim on the experience even as the body moves forward. It colors the action with the quality of fear rather than the quality of faith, and that color reaches the outer world through tone, through body language, through the subtle shifts in communication that reflect inner state. Do not dramatize the fear. Acknowledge that the doubt is present, take the action anyway, and let the absence of dramatization be the statement of inner authority. The action, taken with calm, taken completely, taken without dramatizing the internal experience of it, becomes its own proof of the new inner position. Not proof to the outer world, proof to the inner one. Each time an action is completed in this way, the part of the mind that expected to be stopped by the doubt learns something new about what the person is actually capable of. The fearless mind is built in exactly this way, not through large declarations, but through the accumulated evidence of small actions taken clearly and completely in the face of the doubt that wanted to prevent them. Doubt will return, not as a dramatic confrontation, not as a moment of crisis that announces itself clearly enough to be addressed head-on, but subtly in the ordinary texture of an ordinary day. A comment heard, a comparison made, a result that did not come as expected, a moment of silence that the doubt immediately fills with its familiar narrative. The return of doubt is not a sign of failure. It is a predictable feature of the creative process for anyone working to replace a long-established inner pattern. The only response that does not restore doubt's authority is the refusal to negotiate with it when it returns. Negotiating with doubt means entertaining its arguments. It means giving the returned doubt an audience, allowing it to make its case, weighing its evidence, treating its conclusions as possibilities that deserve consideration. The moment the mind takes doubt's return as an occasion for genuine deliberation, doubt has already regained its position. The response to its return must not be deliberation. It must be recognition and refusal. That is the same doubt that has been destroying results. I recognize it. I do not negotiate. The recognition is enough. The refusal to negotiate is the act. After recognition and refusal, the return to definite thought is the immediate practical step. Not a prolonged internal struggle, not a long emotional restoration process, simply the return to the specific, clear form that was being held. State it again inside the mind, with the full precision that was present when it was first impressed. Bring back the image in its exact details. Restore the quality of definiteness that the doubt's return had begun to soften. The definite thought is the foundation. Returning to it is the act of resealing the crack that the doubt's return had opened. Gratitude follows the return to definite thought as the act that restores the open connection to source. When the form is clearly held again and the mind is no longer occupied with the doubt, enter gratitude deliberately. Find the real things that are genuinely present and genuinely worthy of thanks, not forced thanks, not the performance of gratitude as an obligation. Genuine acknowledgement of what is real and good, held with the same steady quality that faith requires. Gratitude performed immediately after returning from doubt is especially powerful because it is the mind's declaration that the doubt did not finally succeed in closing the channel. From that restored state, take one action that is directly aligned with the form. Not a large action necessarily, not a sweeping commitment, but one clear, specific, aligned step. The action completes the restoration. It moves the body into alignment with the inner position, and it signals to the entire creative process that the doubt's return was acknowledged, addressed, and released, without allowing it to stop the forward movement of the certain way. One aligned step, taken from restored faith, is the punctuation mark that ends the sentence the doubt was trying to write. Consider someone who has identified a specific desired form in the area of wealth. They have studied the certain way. They have impressed the form through definite thought. They have taken the actions required to create the channel, and underneath all of it, so quiet it has never been directly examined, runs the steady expectation of financial loss. Not the expectation of a specific loss, not a fear of a particular failure, but a general bone-deep conviction, inherited from years of experience and perhaps from a longer family history, that wealth approaches them and then leaves. That financial stability is something other people maintain more easily than they do. That something in their particular situation, their particular nature, works against the final arrival of what they are pursuing. The application of this teaching begins when they stop moving over that conviction and go directly into it. They name it specifically. I secretly believe that money leaves me. I expect loss even when I am in the process of building. That expectation is the hidden doubt that has been cracking the form every time I impress it. The naming is uncomfortable. It strips away the more acceptable versions, the "I'm just being careful" and the "I don't want to take this for granted," that have been providing cover for the operating belief. The real belief, named plainly, is seen for what it is. With the doubt named, the behavior that was reinforcing it becomes visible. Every time they mentioned how things were not adding up financially, every time they checked the account from a place of dread rather than faith, every time they described the desired outcome with qualifiers that acknowledged the expected loss, all of these were feeding the crack in the foundation. They stop, deliberately, not all at once because the habit is ingrained, but consistently. When the doubting speech arises, they redirect it. When the fearful checking begins, they return to the form. When the qualifier appears in thought, the replacement is chosen. Their action, previously taken with the contracted quality of someone bracing for loss, begins to carry a different character. The proposal is sent completely, without the hedging language that had been softening it against anticipated rejection. The conversation is had from a position of genuine expectation of mutual value, rather than from the posture of someone presenting a case they expect to lose. The waiting period between action and result is held in gratitude rather than in vigilance. And the results, which had been arriving partially and then retreating, begin to stabilize. Not because the outer world changed, because the inner foundation was sealed, and a sealed foundation holds what is built upon it. Doubt destroys by division. This is the irreducible truth of everything this teaching has been building toward. A divided mind impresses a divided form. A divided form is held by divided faith. Divided faith produces conditional gratitude and inconsistent action. And the result of a creative process run by a divided mind is exactly what a divided mind produces: something partial, unstable, and unable to compound. The mechanism of destruction is not complicated once it is seen clearly. It is a single crack in a single foundation, and that crack runs through the entire structure above it. Faith creates by unity, not by intensity, not by volume, not by the sophistication of the visualization technique or the eloquence of the affirmation. By unity, a mind aligned with a single clear form, holding it without inner argument, preserving it through all weather until it appears in visible expression, is a mind that has satisfied every condition the creative law requires. The unity is the power. The undivided inner position is the force that moves the creative substance toward the form that was impressed. Everything else, every technique, every practice, every outer behavior, is the downstream expression of a unity that is either present in the foundation or absent from it. The fearless mind is the undivided mind, not the painless mind, not the mind that never encounters doubt, never feels the sensation of uncertainty, never moves through seasons of apparent silence. The mind that encounters all of those things and remains, in its deepest operating position, aligned with the form it has chosen to hold. The fearlessness is not the absence of the encounter, it is the outcome of the encounter, the consistent refusal to allow what passes through the mind to revise the position of the mind. That refusal, sustained through every return of doubt, is what builds the fearless mind into something permanent rather than something occasionally achieved. The old life has a recognizable texture, half faith expressed through careful language that never quite commits, fear hidden beneath frameworks of realism and self-protection, action taken with the internal quality of someone who expects to be disappointed, which communicates itself in tone and presence and follow-through in ways that shape the outcome before it arrives. A relationship with the creative law that is sincere in its desire and compromised in its operation. The old life is not a life without effort. It is a life in which all effort is filtered through an operating assumption that limits what the effort can produce. The new life does not begin with new circumstances. It begins with a new inner position applied to the current circumstances. Definite thought about a specific form held without inner qualification. Steady faith that continues through delay without converting the delay into evidence of failure. Efficient action taken completely and calmly, without the contracted quality of the doubting mind. This combination, operating consistently rather than occasionally, produces a creative process that the law can engage fully. The new life is not the result of easier conditions. It is the result of a mind that stopped dividing itself against its own command. The old mind protected itself with doubt. This was its strategy for managing the pain of repeated disappointment, lower the inner investment, so that when the failure came, the exposure was managed. The new mind does not need that protection because the new mind is not expecting failure. The new mind has changed the operating assumption, not by denying that the outer world sometimes presents challenges, but by deciding that the law is the stable thing and the outer evidence is the variable. That decision changes the creative process from the inside, and the inside is where all results begin. The move from old life to new life is not the achievement of a permanent state. It is the commitment to a continuous practice. The old mind will return in moments of pressure. The doubt will offer its services during delays. The sophisticated disguises will reappear when full faith feels exposed. Knowing this, the new life is built not on the assumption that the old patterns are gone forever, but on the daily practice of recognizing their return and refusing to govern the creative process by them. Every day, the new mind is chosen. Over the old one is a day the foundation becomes more sealed, the channel more open, and the form more clearly on its way to visible expression. The result was not destroyed at the end. It was not destroyed by a poorly constructed visualization or a miscalculated action or an affirmation that lacked emotional authenticity. It was destroyed at the crack, in the beginning, before the first wall rose above the ground. At the exact moment when the form was being impressed, the hidden doubt was already introducing its division into the foundation of faith that would have held the form in place. The building collapsed later. The cause was in the ground from the start. This is why improving the walls never fixed anything. The walls were not the problem. Destroy the doubt and the form can be preserved. These are not two separate activities with separate instructions. They are one act with one consequence. The destruction of the doubt is the act of sealing the foundation. The preservation of the form is what a sealed foundation makes possible. They happen together, in the same inner movement, when the person names the doubt, confronts it as an enemy, refuses to govern their creative process by it, and returns to the definite thought and steady faith that the law requires. The doubt is destroyed not through suppression, but through the deliberate restoration of the inner unity that the doubt had been breaking. Preserve the form. These three words are the entire practical instruction, compressed to its essential meaning. The desired form held in clear, definite thought, preserved through steady, undivided faith, maintained through genuine gratitude, and channeled through consistent, efficient action. This is the certain way. Preserving the form means not allowing the doubt to revise it, not allowing the delay to shrink it, not allowing the apparent evidence to soften it. The form is preserved exactly as it was impressed, through all seasons, until the creative substance has arranged the visible world around it. Every other teaching in this framework is in service of that one act. Preserve the form. The crack was always inside. The answer was always inside too. The fearless mind is not a possession of a gifted few. It is the natural condition of a mind that has identified its inner enemy, named it without diplomacy, confronted it without negotiation, and chosen the unity of faith over the false safety of division. This is available to the person who has been working in half-faith for years and is willing today to stop building over the crack and start sealing it. The law has been ready the entire time. The structure it is prepared to raise is exactly the one the form intended. All that was ever needed was a foundation the law could actually build on. There is one thing left to do in this moment. Everything described in this teaching, the naming, the confrontation, the return to definite thought, the sealing of the foundation, the refusal to negotiate with the inner enemy, all of it converges in a single declaration. Not a passive acknowledgement, not a thoughtful nod. A battle cry from the person who has recognized what has been destroying their results and has decided with full authority that it ends now. The declaration is not for the outer world, it is for the inner one, for the hidden doubt that has been living in the foundation, for the crack that has been spreading beneath every practice, every effort, every sincere attempt to engage the certain way. This declaration is not something said once and forgotten. It is the new operating command of the mind that has chosen the fearless position. It is the sentence that replaces the quiet but with an equally quiet but infinitely more powerful refusal. Say it knowing what it means. Say it knowing the crack it seals, the enemy it confronts, the form it preserves, and the result that becomes possible the moment this inner position becomes the actual operating ground of the creative process. The declaration is ready. Say it. If this teaching has reached you, something in you already recognized it. Not as new information, but as the name of something you have been living with for longer than you realized. The quiet but beneath the affirmation. The expectation of disappointment dressed as realism. The crack in the foundation beneath every structure you tried to build. You recognized it because it has been yours, and because some part of you, the part that drove you to study this, to keep trying, to return to the law after every collapse, already knew it was the problem. That part of you is not small. That part of you is the fearless mind waiting to operate without the doubt dividing it. Now comes the declaration, not as a performance, as a commitment. In the comment section below, write the 3 words that seal the foundation, that confront the inner enemy, that replace the hidden but with the authority of the undivided mind. Write what you are now, what you are becoming, what the creative process is now free to receive from you. I destroy the doubt. Say it as a decision. Say it as the statement of the new operating position of the mind that has chosen law over false protection, faith over hidden fear, the preserved form over the collapsed result. These three words are not a mantra. They are a verdict. The verdict of the fearless mind against the inner enemy that has been working against its creative authority. When the doubt returns as it will, this declaration is the response. Not a long deliberation, not a return to examination and analysis. Three words, clear, direct, final. The crack is named. The foundation is sealed, the form is held, the law is engaged, the result is on its way. I destroy the doubt. If Wallace Wattles' teaching on the fearless mind, on definite thought, on steady faith, and the precise inner conditions that the creative law requires, has opened something in your understanding, subscribe to this channel. Every week, these teachings are brought forward in their full depth, not as summaries, not as motivational highlights, but as complete explorations of the hidden mechanisms of wealth, thought, fear, faith, and creation that Wattles and the classical masters spent their lives documenting. Subscribe so that each new teaching reaches you as it is released. There are more videos in this collection that go deeper into the specific elements of the certain way, how gratitude functions as a living connection rather than a ritual practice, how definite thought differs from wishful thinking, how to identify and remove the other inner obstacles that prevent the creative process from completing itself. This channel exists for those who are serious about understanding these laws at the level where they actually operate. If that is you, you are in the right place. Subscribe and stay with the teaching. From this point forward, stop hiding the doubt. Stop calling it by its sophisticated names. Stop granting it authority over the inner position by treating it as wisdom, as realism, as self-protection. It was never any of those things. It was the inner enemy of the creative process, and it has been destroying results before they appeared for exactly as long as it has been allowed to remain unnamed in the foundation. The first act of the fearless mind is the honest one. The acknowledgement that the doubt has been present, that it has been operating and that it will no longer be permitted to run the creative process from beneath the surface of the practice. Protect the faith. This is the ongoing discipline, the daily act of the fearless mind, the continuous practice that the certain way requires. Protect it from the checking, from the speaking against the form, from the sophistication that disguises reservation as wisdom, from the comparison that re-establishes the exception-making, from the abandonment of action after silence. Protect the faith the way a person protects the foundation of something they are building to last, actively, deliberately, without apology. The faith is the only thing that preserves the form while the law does its work, and nothing that has the authority to weaken it should be allowed near the ground. The result is not destroyed at the end. It is destroyed at the crack. Seal the crack. Hold the form. Continue in the certain way through every season that passes between the impression and the appearance. And carry this as the sentence that marks the new beginning of the creative process, the sentence that the fearless mind speaks over the doubt every time the doubt attempts its return. Destroy the doubt before it destroys the result.